The golden California sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Shaquille O'Neal's modern mansion, casting warm patterns across the pristine interior. Dressed casually and feeling relaxed, Shaq stood in his spacious kitchen, sipping his morning coffee while scrolling through his social media feeds. Thousands of fans were engaging with his posts, sending messages of admiration and support that brought a genuine smile to his face. The morning held the promise of a peaceful day. After responding to several fan comments, Shaq decided it was the perfect time to head out to his favorite cafe to meet some friends. The thought of a casual morning out, away from the pressures of his various business ventures and media commitments, appealed to him immensely. Making his way to the garage, he approached his prized possession, a striking red Ferrari, customized to accommodate his impressive frame. The car was more than just a vehicle. It was a statement of success, a reminder of how far he'd come from his humble beginnings. As he eased the powerful machine out of the garage, the morning light caught its polished surface, creating a dazzling display that turned heads in his upscale neighborhood. The streets of the city were relatively quiet at this hour, and Shaq enjoyed the smooth drive, the gentle purr of the Ferrari's engine providing a perfect soundtrack to the morning. At each stoplight, fellow drivers and pedestrians would recognize him, offering friendly waves and smiles. Shaq always reciprocated. Staying connected to people had always been an essential part of who he was, from his NBA days to his current role as a respected public figure. The Ferrari's climate control kept him comfortable as he navigated through the familiar streets, his mind already anticipating a relaxing morning ahead. His phone occasionally buzzed with notifications, but he kept his focus on the road, following the traffic rules with his usual careful attention. The peaceful morning drive took an unexpected turn when Shaq noticed the flashing lights of a police cruiser in his rearview mirror. Initially, he wasn't concerned. He knew he hadn't been speeding or breaking any traffic rules. Following standard procedure, he carefully pulled his Ferrari to the curb, positioning it safely away from the flow of traffic. Through his mirror, Shaq observed the police officer emerging from the cruiser. Something about the officer's body language immediately set off warning signals in his mind. The approach seemed unnecessarily aggressive, the officer's stance hostile before any interaction had even begun. Drawing from years of experience in the public eye, Shaq calmly reached for his phone and opened his social media app. His instincts told him this situation might require documentation. Without making any sudden movements, he positioned his phone carefully and accessed the live streaming feature. Before Shaq could even fully lower his window, the officer's aggressive voice cut through the morning air. "Get out of the vehicle now." The command was harsh and unnecessary, especially since Shaq hadn't even been told why he was being stopped. Maintaining his composure, Shaq responded in a calm, respectful tone. "Officer, could you please tell me why I'm being pulled over?" As he spoke, he discreetly activated the live stream, knowing that transparency would be crucial in this situation. The officer's response was immediate and even more aggressive. "I said get out of the vehicle, now." His posture became more threatening, his hand hovering near his holster in a clear display of unnecessary intimidation. As the tension escalated, passers-by began to notice the scene unfolding. Several people slowed their pace, phones appearing in their hands as they recognized the famous figure in the Ferrari. The live stream's viewer count started to climb rapidly, the digital audience growing by the thousands with each passing moment. What had started as a peaceful morning drive had suddenly transformed into something entirely different. The sun, that had seemed so welcoming earlier, now felt harsh and exposing, highlighting every detail of this increasingly tense situation. As Shaq kept his hands visible and his voice steady, he knew that this moment would resonate far beyond this street corner, far beyond this morning and far beyond his own experience. The tension escalated as the officer's demands became more forceful. Shaq's live stream had already attracted tens of thousands of viewers, with the numbers growing exponentially as the confrontation unfolded. The morning air grew thick with tension as more spectators gathered around the scene, their phones raised high to capture every moment. "Last warning, exit the vehicle immediately." The officer's voice carried an inexplicable anger that seemed vastly disproportionate to the situation. Shaq, maintaining his professional composure, kept his hands visible at all times, both for his safety and to demonstrate his compliance to the thousands watching online. "I'm complying, officer," Shaq announced calmly, his movements deliberate and measured. As he stepped out of the Ferrari, his impressive stature seemed to agitate the officer further. Without warning or justification, the officer grabbed Shaq's arm roughly, forcing him against the car's surface with unnecessary force. The crowd that had gathered let out collective gasps of shock and outrage. Phones captured every angle of the confrontation, while comments and shares on social media platforms exploded with activity. The hashtag #InShaqLive quickly began trending nationwide as more and more people tuned into the live stream. Just as the situation seemed to be spiraling out of control, a senior officer arrived at the scene. The veteran law enforcement official, known for his dedication to protecting citizens' rights, immediately assessed the situation with a look of grave concern. His arrival marked a turning point in the confrontation. The senior officer's voice cut through the tension with authority and professionalism. "Stand down," he commanded the aggressive officer, his tone leaving no room for argument. The command was clear and firm, born from years of experience and a deep understanding of proper police conduct. As the aggressive officer reluctantly stepped back, the senior officer approached Shaq with a respectful demeanor. "Mr. O'Neill, I apologize for this situation," he said, his sincerity evident in both his words and actions. The contrast between the two officers' approaches was stark and telling. The live stream had now reached hundreds of thousands of viewers. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could read them, expressing outrage at the initial officer's behavior and relief at the intervention of the senior officer. The incident had transformed from a local confrontation into a national moment of reckoning. Community leaders began arriving at the scene, having seen the live stream or received calls from concerned citizens. The sidewalks were packed with onlookers, their presence serving as both witness and protection. News vans appeared, their crews rushing to capture the unfolding story that had already captured the nation's attention. The senior officer took immediate action, announcing that the aggressive officer would be suspended pending a full investigation. His decisive response drew approving murmurs from the crowd and supportive comments from the online audience, who had been watching the entire incident unfold in real time. Social media platforms exploded with activity, as clips from various angles were shared millions of times. Celebrities, athletes, and public figures began posting messages of support for Shaq, condemning the initial officer's actions and praising the senior officer's intervention. Through it all, Shaq maintained his dignity and composure, transforming what could have been just another incident into a powerful moment for change. His decision to live stream the encounter had ensured transparency and accountability, making it impossible for the truth to be disputed or denied. The morning sun now stood high in the sky, witnessing a scene that had evolved from a simple traffic stop into a catalyst for larger conversations about authority, respect, and justice. The thousands watching online and the hundreds gathered on the street understood they were witnessing something significant, a moment that would spark crucial discussions about the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. As the situation began to stabilize, the senior officer ensured that proper procedures were followed, demonstrating how law enforcement should operate, with respect, professionalism, and a commitment to protecting citizens' rights. The contrast between the two approaches to policing couldn't have been more clear or more powerfully illustrated. The video of Shaquille O'Neal's encounter with law enforcement spread across social media platforms like wildfire. Within hours of the incident, major news networks had picked up the story, their broadcasts featuring clips from Shaq's live stream, alongside eyewitness footage from the growing crowd that had gathered at the scene. As Shaq sat in his home office later that day, his phone buzzed constantly with messages of support and interview requests from media outlets worldwide. His social media notifications had become a steady stream of solidarity, with millions sharing and commenting on the morning's events. The hashtag #RoyceStandWithShaq had joined #ShaqLive at the top of trending topics nationwide. Community leaders and activists began organizing impromptu gatherings outside police stations across the city. What started as small groups quickly grew into peaceful assemblies of hundreds, then thousands, Signs bearing messages of support for Shaq and calls for police reform dotted the crowds, their holders representing a diverse cross-section of society united in their demand for change. In front of the main police headquarters, a group of concerned citizens had already begun drafting a petition. Their demands were clear: immediate reform of police training protocols, mandatory body cameras, and stricter accountability measures for officers who abuse their authority. The petition, shared online, gathered signatures at an unprecedented rate. Shaq's personal legal team worked diligently to prepare a formal complaint, but their client had made it clear this wasn't about personal vengeance or financial compensation. It was about creating lasting change in how law enforcement interacts with all citizens, regardless of their status or background. News crews stationed themselves outside Shaq's residence, hoping to catch a statement from the basketball legend turned activist. Instead of hiding from the attention, Shaq chose to use his platform purposefully. He scheduled a series of interviews with trusted journalists, each conversation focusing not on his celebrity status, but on the broader implications of what had occurred. "This isn't just about me," Shaq explained during one particularly powerful interview. "This is about every person who has ever felt powerless in the face of authority. It's about ensuring that our law enforcement system serves and protects everyone equally." Social media platforms became forums for shared experiences as thousands began posting their own stories of encounters with law enforcement. The conversation expanded beyond the immediate incident, touching on deeper issues of institutional reform and community relations. Digital activists created online spaces for people to share their experiences and organize for change. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, the veteran officer who had intervened during the incident was working with department leadership to implement immediate changes. His years of experience and commitment to community policing made him an invaluable voice in discussions about reform. The department announced the formation of a civilian oversight committee, a direct response to the public's demands for greater accountability. Local businesses and organizations began showing their support. Coffee shops offered free beverages to peaceful protesters, while tech companies pledged resources to help develop better training programs for law enforcement. The incident had sparked a movement that transcended traditional social and economic boundaries. Community centers opened their doors for town hall meetings where citizens could voice their concerns and suggestions for improvement. These gatherings brought together people from all walks of life: teachers, business owners, students, and retired officers, all contributing to a constructive dialogue about the future of policing in their community. The senior officer who had intervened during the incident became a vocal advocate for change within the department. His actions that morning had demonstrated the power of experienced professional law enforcement in de-escalating tense situations. Now he worked to ensure that his colleagues understood the importance of treating every citizen with respect and dignity. As evening approached, Shaq reviewed the day's events with his team. The incident that could have ended tragically had instead become a catalyst for positive change. His decision to live stream the encounter had not only protected him, but had also given voice to countless others who had faced similar situations without the protection of celebrity status or social media attention. The next morning, Shaquille O'Neal stood before a sea of cameras and microphones, ready to address the media in a formal press conference. The backdrop behind him displayed logos of various civil rights organizations and community groups that had rallied to support the cause. His presence commanded attention, but it was his message that would capture hearts. "What happened yesterday was not just about me," Shaq began, his voice steady and purposeful. "It's about every person who has ever felt powerless in a situation where they should have felt protected. It's about transforming a moment of confrontation into an opportunity for positive change." As he spoke, social media channels lit up with real-time reactions. Influential figures from sports, entertainment, and politics shared clips of his speech, amplifying his message to millions. The press conference wasn't just being covered by traditional media. Citizen journalists and social media influencers ensured that every word reached audiences across all platforms. The veteran officer who had intervened during the incident sat in the front row, representing a contingent of law enforcement officials who supported reform. His presence symbolized the possibility of cooperation between law enforcement and the community, a bridge between two groups often seen as adversaries. Throughout the day, evidence continued to emerge. Security camera footage from nearby businesses and body camera videos from other officers arrived at news stations, providing additional perspectives on the incident. Each new angle reinforced the importance of transparency and accountability in law enforcement. Tech-savvy supporters created digital platforms where people could report and document similar incidents, ensuring that no voice went unheard. These digital watchdogs became powerful tools for monitoring and reporting questionable law enforcement practices, while also highlighting examples of positive police-community interactions. Community organizers worked tirelessly to maintain momentum. They coordinated peaceful demonstrations, organized educational workshops about civil rights, and facilitated meaningful discussions between law enforcement representatives and community members. The movement that had started with one incident was evolving into a sustained campaign for systemic change. Inside police headquarters, reform efforts were already underway. The department announced new training programs focused on de-escalation techniques and cultural sensitivity. The veteran officer who had intervened during Shaq's incident was appointed to lead these training initiatives, bringing his years of experience and commitment to community policing to the role. Legal experts and civil rights attorneys offered free workshops to educate citizens about their rights during law enforcement encounters. These sessions, live-streamed and recorded for broader access, empowered people with knowledge while emphasizing the importance of peaceful, lawful resistance to injustice. As evening approached, Shaq participated in a virtual town hall meeting, connecting with supporters across the country. The online format allowed for unprecedented participation, with thousands joining to share their stories and suggestions for reform. The discussion focused not just on problems, but on practical solutions and steps forward. Local politicians, sensing the mood of their constituents, began drafting legislation to address police reform. The incident had created political will for change that might have taken years to achieve otherwise. Proposals included enhanced training requirements, stricter accountability measures, and increased funding for community policing programs. The movement continued to grow, but it maintained its focus on peaceful, constructive change. Shaq's measured response to the incident had set the tone. This wasn't about division or retaliation, but about building a better system that would serve and protect all members of the community equally. Social media platforms remained ablaze with activity, but the conversation had evolved. Instead of just sharing angry reactions, people were now sharing solutions, success stories, and examples of positive police-community interactions. The narrative was shifting from protest to progress, from confrontation to collaboration. A week after the incident, Shaquille O'Neal sat in his home studio, preparing for what would become his most impactful live stream yet. The past 7 days had witnessed an unprecedented surge of activism and awareness across the nation. What had begun as a confrontation on a Los Angeles street had blossomed into a movement that transcended geographical and social boundaries. The investigation into the incident had revealed a pattern of similar behavior within certain segments of law enforcement. The veteran officer's intervention had not only prevented an escalation that day, but had also sparked a crucial internal dialogue within police departments nationwide. His example had become a model for proper police conduct and community engagement. As Shaq adjusted his camera settings for the live stream, he reflected on the whirlwind of events that had followed the incident. His social media platforms had become powerful tools for change, with millions of followers actively engaged in discussions about reform and community empowerment. The hashtags that had emerged from his initial live stream had evolved into organized, digital communities dedicated to documenting and addressing systemic issues. "We're live in 5 minutes," his media coordinator announced. But Shaq was already centered and focused. He had prepared for this moment, understanding its significance in maintaining the momentum for change that had been building throughout the week. The live stream began with record-breaking viewership. Shaq's presence filled the screen as he addressed his audience with the same dignity and composure he had shown during the incident. "Today I want to talk about power," he began. "Not the kind of power that comes from authority or force, but the power that comes from unity and truth." As he spoke, reactions poured in from around the world. Community leaders who had been organizing local initiatives shared their progress. Politicians announced new legislative proposals for police reform. Law enforcement officials committed to revising their training protocols and accountability measures. The veteran officer who had intervened during the incident appeared as a special guest on the stream, sharing his perspective on the importance of professional conduct and community trust. His words carried the weight of experience and the promise of change from within the system itself. Digital activism had taken on new forms in the wake of the incident. Tech-savvy supporters had developed apps and platforms for reporting and tracking police interactions, ensuring transparency and accountability. These tools, born from necessity, were already being adopted by communities across the country. But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of a national dialogue about the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. The conversation had moved beyond simple criticism to focus on constructive solutions and collaborative approaches to public safety. Shaq shared stories from citizens who had reached out to him throughout the week. Stories of both challenging encounters and positive changes. Each account added another thread to the tapestry of experiences that was helping to shape the national conversation about police reform. The live stream reached its crescendo as Shaq delivered his call to action. "The power to change our reality lies not in moments of confrontation," he declared, "but in our unified response to those moments. When we stand together, when we share our truth, when we demand better, that's when real change begins." As the broadcast continued, announcements of new initiatives poured in. Police departments across the country were adopting enhanced training programs. Community oversight boards were being established. Educational institutions were developing new curricula focused on civil rights and community relations. The movement had taken on a life of its own, expanding beyond its original catalyst to address broader issues of social justice and community empowerment. What had started as one man's decision to document an unjust encounter had grown into a nationwide awakening. Shaq concluded his stream with a message of hope and responsibility. "This isn't the end," he reminded his audience. "It's a beginning. Every one of us has the power to make a difference. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Together we can create the change we want to see." As the live stream ended, the impact of his words continued to resonate across social media platforms and news outlets. The incident that had threatened to become another tragedy had instead become a catalyst for positive change, demonstrating the power of unity, technology, and peaceful resistance in the face of injustice. The movement that had begun with a simple live stream had evolved into something much more significant, a testament to the power of collective action and the possibility of real, lasting change. Shaq's experience had become more than just another headline. It had become a blueprint for transformation, proving that when people unite in pursuit of justice, their voice becomes impossible to ignore.